Welcome to 15 with Christine. Daniel Allison, otherwise known as the average dude, and you're going to want to hear that story, is our guest today. So let's get started. On 15 with Christine, we talk about all things business growth. But before we dive in, I want to let you know where you can find the broadcast. I'll come to you live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Hit the subscribe button and you won't miss an episode. My goal with 15 with Christine is to introduce you to people who can take your business, take your career to the next level. And today we are talking with one of my favorite people, Daniel Allison, who I actually got to know on LinkedIn just from his fabulous energy and the content that he shares. And I'm so excited to have him here to talk about his story today. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Christine. I'm happy to be on 15 with Christine. Looking forward to it.
Well, I see you've got there Daniel Allison, the average dude.
Yes.
So can I ask you first to tell us about your story? What does the average dude mean? And how did you come up with that moniker, your podcast?
Yeah. So actually a friend of mine, Sally Love, I don't know. Do you know Sally Love?
I do.
Yeah. So I met her through an ING, like a Zoom meeting or a real sales talk, something like that.
Right.
And so we had been talking just on that platform, but she reached out to me after and said, have you ever thought about starting a podcast? And I said, no, I haven't. She said, well, I'm thinking about starting one and I think you should start one too. And I said, well, let's do it, And so we talked about it a little more and ended up going on a Zoom call where some guys were talking about podcasting and that sort of thing. I tell that part of the story to tell this part. So that night I just said, well, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do the first episode tonight. And so I went on Anchor, which is where I did it. And it said, record your first episode. And I was just going to talk myself, And so I decided at that moment, I was like, well, what am I going to call it? And I started thinking of all the different things that I could call it. And I said, man, in my mind, I said, I'm just an average dude. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And so I said, maybe that's it. I'm the average dude. And I immediately just went and hit record. And after I recorded that first episode, all of these other ideas of things that the average dude could actually represent and lessons that we could learn from that. So I'm glad that I made that decision because it's kind of led to some other thoughts, So that's where it came from.
I love hearing your thought process. And from a creative standpoint, what else has come to mind as you're exploring that whole average dude concept?
Yes. So one of the things that I think about quite often is a lot of skills are measurable,
Yes.
So intellect or athletic, how much do you lift? How fast do you run?
Yes.
But really the things that we can't measure are the things that really differentiate folks, so it's the courage to take action, to get uncomfortable, grit, positivity. These are the sorts of things. And so sometimes we get caught up in measuring ourselves against others or looking at the numbers, so to speak.
Right.
But there's a lot of freedom in just saying there's so much freedom. Honestly, being the average dude gives me so much freedom because it's kind of putting yourself in an underdog type position. Nobody wants to be the average dude, And so it really helps to kind of free you up, to not have imposter syndrome and just say, hey, look, I'm not trying to be anything but myself and do the best that I can with what I have. Right.
Yeah. Just being authentic.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
That's fantastic. And to see how powerful it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things. I had some people, the average dude, they were like, kind of questioning me at first that they made me second guess myself. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I actually I'm glad that I picked the average dude, and it's kind of become my thing now. So I started the podcast with the average dude, and then I said, you know what? That's who I'm going to be. So that's why I started doing LinkedIn and things like that with the same thing.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
We're both in the industrial network group.
Yep.
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. You
Yes.
are in South Carolina.
Yes.
Um, how did you get involved with the industrial network group? It sounds like that was the connection to your podcast and the genesis of the
Yeah.
app. But
And
tell us more about that.
it's been so great. I mean, the way that I learned about the ING group was I was actually I was actually looking for a new sales job, right?
Yes.
And I was calling some folks that were in my network, folks that I'd talked to previously. And I talked to a guy named Hal Morris who had gone to an ING meeting and met
Yes.
Chris Simmons. And he said, so I was just randomly calling my network and saying, hey, what's going on, catching up. And he said, you need to talk to Chris Simmons. He said, I just got a good feeling about it. And so I hung up
Chris
the phone
is a good
with
guy to know.
Yes, he is. And so I called Chris, and as soon as I hung up with Hal, I called Chris, and Chris said, "Hey, come, we got a meeting. It's on this date. Be there." So I was, and ended up meeting Waldrop Mechanical at that meeting, and so that's where I ended up working. But then Waldrop was obviously part of the ING group.
Yes.
So it's been, over 4 years now, and I'm the coordinator for Spartanburg, and just have so many good friendships and opportunities for leadership and training and just, and even this, I wouldn't be on 15 with Christine if it wasn't for ING. So really, Chris has done an excellent job, and I'm really happy to be a part of that.
Well, and you helped us get started in Birmingham. You actually joined our first meeting.
Yeah, I remember.
Because we were all figuring out how do we get this going, and we leaned on people like you and others that have built successful chapters.
Mm-hmm.
The industrial network group it has been just a fantastic way to build relationships.
It is. It's almost like it's a way to group people together, like you say, over the entire Southeast or whatever. Hey, you're in the ING, I am too. So it's a really neat thing when you have that commonality or whatever that is. So
yes, because it attracts people, I think, with a lot of those intangible values that you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Those things you can't always measure, but that really matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
I know you're a public speaker too. What are you doing with that, Daniel?
So the way that I got into public speaking was through Toastmasters. Yeah. And I was walking and listening to an audio, and the gentleman that was talking said, whatever it is that scares you the most, that is also something that could help you, make more money. I think he made it money making skills or something like that. Right. He said, whatever that is, you need to take action on it right now. Wow. So I stopped right then, and I started calling different, I wasn't familiar with Toastmasters, so I didn't know where I was going to go. I just knew that I was real scared to give a speech, but I also knew that I needed to, and so I started calling around, and then I learned about Toastmasters, and then that journey began, and it was just a fantastic. So I go occasionally now, but I went to several clubs and went, several times per week for about two or 3 years.
Wow. Yeah, I was in Toastmasters many years ago. But yeah, you go and you practice, right?
You practice, and the way that everybody kind of has their own kind of way that they use that program. Right. But for me, what I did is I would give a speech and I would try something new. I would try to put myself out of my comfort zone with each speech. So, and also working on, communication and the other things that Toastmasters has you call on. It's just, but I wanted to try one thing new with each speech. And so I started kind of building that, but I did a lot of things that made me uncomfortable. So you're already speaking, you're already uncomfortable. And what I really wanted to try to change is, you feel like you're in this glass box. You get small when you're on stage, and I wanted to really, go against that and try to go bigger. So it's a great opportunity to, like you say, practice.
Daniel, I think a lot of the people who are listening, there's things they want to do. They're uncomfortable. It can be tough to change. How did you bridge that gap to take action and just get past that uncomfortable feeling?
I think honestly, if I answer that honestly, I would say that it's part of my personality, so I'm a great starter. you know, I mean, if I tell myself I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. But now that, but then you get into the consistency and dotting I's and crossing the T's and whatever
Right,
that looks
right,
like, that's a different skill. But,
right.
but I guess for me, it's, I have trained myself. I've done a lot of things like that, just an
Yes.
idea of, hey, there's something I want to try. And then I just go and do it immediately. And so I've trained myself to do that. I do like that idea that there's a book. I think it was written by Mel Robbins. I'm not sure about that.
I'm
But
a huge fan of Mel Robbins.
yeah, so she talks about counting down 5, 4, 3, 2,
Yes.
1, boom.
Yes.
And that's basically what I do. I mean, because in my mind said, no, don't do this. What are you, crazy? Everything that you can say, but I don't give myself any time to even, hey, if I'm not going to be consistent, I have to take action, right? So that's the way I kind of do it.
Yeah, well, you're directing your brain.
Yeah, there you
go. Any other tips? You have a lot of energy, you have a lot of drive, but we all have different styles, we all have different challenges. Mm-hmm. Before we wrap up, do you have any other mindset tips or things that you have done to help you accomplish those goals? Because I think everyone listening, when they hear your story, they're thinking, wow, he took action on some things I want to take action on.
Yeah.
Any other advice for people? Because I think it really resonates. It resonates with me, and I think it's going to resonate with everyone else who's listening.
Yeah. So I would say that it doesn't take a lot. So it's small things, small habits, things like, every day I'm going to make my bed,
Yes.
And every day I'm going to, get some form of exercise. Every day I'm going to whatever. But for me, I just started kind of creating this, I guess it's a daily routine, but you feed your body the right things.
Yes.
And you tell yourself, okay, the only thing that's really separating folks is the doers from the non-doers, that from there's plenty of people so much more talented than the average dude, that aren't doing it. So it's the doing, and the great thing about it is because it's fun. I mean, doing those sorts of things, putting ourselves out, we think, but then when we do it, it's always, the reward is always there.
You're exactly right, because it's no fun to just sit and be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, no, it's not.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Daniel, thanks so much for dropping in to share about the average dude. Tell us, what's the best way for people to follow you, to connect with you? Look you up on LinkedIn? Yes.
So I'm on LinkedIn, and that's the best way to find me. Now you can Google the Average Dude podcast, and it's on a lot of different platforms there. And but yeah, that's it. Best place to find me is LinkedIn. Awesome.
Well, Daniel, thanks so much. For everyone who's listening, we appreciate you joining us. Mark your calendars. Thursday, December 23rd. Jessica Miller, the executive director of the Alzheimer's Association, is coming to share with us how they help organizations equip their people to take care of their families and their loved ones. So look forward to talking with Jessica. So until then, have a great day.